Hey YA nerds, my name is Kaye and I like to read a lot, and welcome to another episode of Kaye Reads a Lot where I am still orange and still working on how to fix that. As soon as I can figure out how to color correct in my, editing software, we will be golden. But for right now, let's talk about some books. So I wasn't going to update this week because, some crazy things happened this week in our government, and I wasn't sure that I wanted to talk about books. But I did just finish one that was really good, and I do think we should talk about it, especially since it kind of pertains to what happened in the White House today, which we won't talk about. Ugh. Okay, anyway, so today I wanted to talk to you all about Stamped. Racism, Antiracism, and You, by Jason Reynolds and Ibram X. Kendi. So the cool thing about this book, actually, to start off with, is that it's based off of Ibram X. Kendi's, Dr. Kendi's other book, also called Stamped, but it's called Stamped from the beginning as opposed to just Stamped. This is the YA version of that book, which Jason Reynolds, to say he took it upon himself to create it, doesn't exactly give it the full credit. I have this feeling that he was inspired by Dr. Kendi's work, reached out to him and was like, I'd like to make your book into something accessible for young adults. And Dr. Kendi was like, you got it, man, do it up. And so this book was created. It was actually published in March of 2020 on my birthday, March 10th, yay! And it's 294 pages, or if you listen to the audiobook, it is a short 4 hours. And actually, that's kind of what I wanted to partially talk about with this book specifically. Yeah, it's 294 pages, but I listened to the audiobook for 4 hours, and it was only like a couple of car drives. And the great part about the audiobook is that Jason Reynolds reads it to you. Now, Jason Reynolds speaks a lot. He does a lot of engagements as an author. He's constantly showing up at conferences and whatever, but I have never heard that man speak in my entire life. And oh my God, listening to him in my car makes me want to listen to him in my car all the time. Listen to the audiobook on this one if you get a chance, if you aren't bored to tears with audiobooks, because again, it's really short. I might listen to it again, and it's just like a great listen. Like, I felt like, Jason was driving around with me in my car, chit-chatting with me about the state of the United States, which is why this is also kind of appropriate for this week. Anyway, so definitely give the audiobook a try. Again, like I said, it's fascinating, it's different, it's very conversational, which I think is great, especially if you want to like get young readers onto this. But yeah, I highly recommend it. But also read the book. It's not that long, and a lot of the pages, I just flipped open to one of them, hold on. A lot of the pages have big text. The margins are pretty wide. Some of the pages have lists on them. So it's a quick read, and honestly a very important read. Now, because this book is nonfiction, the plot of this book is pretty much we follow racism throughout the ages and discover why America is like America. And it's painful, it's hard to listen to, because we are talking about racism throughout the ages and how our system of government is kind of built off the backs of Black people, specifically Black slaves that were brought over here against their will to work in our fields and take care of our children, and how ever since we stole these people from their homeland and brought them here against their will, shackled to slave ships, that we've just continued to beat them down over and over again. And Jason runs us through the history of this really neatly. The book's broken up into parts, and we talk about, pretty much the history of racism in America. The great part about this book is that we also talk about the anti-racism in America. And anti-racism seems like a new idea to a lot of people. I know in the last couple of years, especially since Black Lives Matter has come out, that there have been a lot of books, publications done about anti-racism. Ibram X. Kendi did a really good one How to Be an Anti-Racist is also by him. There's also books like White Fragility, and a ton of other books that you can totally read about this phenomenon, is not the right word, this movement. But anti-racism has been around since almost as long as racism has been around. And it's a really fascinating thing to read about. Again, I highly recommend picking up any literature you can about anti-racism, because it is a very important thing to learn about these days. It's a very important thing to learn about any days, but it does seem like a lot more social movements are leaning towards anti-racism as opposed to being a racist and being not a racist, because there's really no such thing as being not a racist. You're either a racist or you're an anti-racist. And when you read these books, you can definitely see the distinction between those two things. So Stamped is really interesting for that, in that regard. And again, it follows up through history up until the third part, which I just want to touch on really quickly, because Jason and Dr. Kendi both talk about Angela Davis, who is such a fascinating, amazing American woman, a Black woman who was a communist, I think in the 70s and 80s and 90s. She's part of the Black Power movement, and she has been fighting against prison reforms. She wants to reform prison. That's what it is. Sorry. I'm just so excited. And he kind of uses her journey towards anti-racism and her writing and everything going on right now. He kind of uses Angela Davis to like spearhead us through the 90s into the 2000s from the 80s. So it's really interesting to like follow that trajectory and know about this woman who you read about some people in books and you think they're not alive anymore, but she's still kicking it, man. And her work is just as important as these two men's work. And I love that Jason and Ibram X. Kendi both were like, women were really important in a lot of these movements, but nobody talks about them. I think that was great of them to do. I feel like I'm already reviewing this and I'm not even ready to review yet, but that's kind of what this book is. It is not a history book, as Jason says several times throughout the book. It's a book about the history of racism and anti-racism. It's a book about the history of all of us, pretty much, but with a focus on these two societal concepts and how they don't have to exist in our world. You can tell how excited I am. So it's a really good book, really interesting. I hope I didn't jumble that up too much. Today has been crazy. Now, because this is a nonfiction book, the tropes don't really work for it, which is sad for me, because that means I kind of have to skip the tropes. That being said, I can apply some tropes to this. I'm going to try to, and I'm going to try to explain them. And again, we'll put the descriptions of them down below. You can see what I'm talking about. Again, because this is nonfiction, they don't necessarily make sense, but you'll see what I'm saying. So the first one we have is Beautiful First Lines. The first lines of the book talk about the past and how we each affect our future by reflecting on our past. And I thought that was really beautiful. And again, listening to Jason Reynolds say it, chef's kiss. We also have Buried Memories. I put that in there. Usually that's when like main characters have memory problems. They have to like solve their memory problems to like solve the mystery of the book. But I feel like this applies to like America in general, because we like to pretend that like slavery didn't happen, that like the Reformation was all we needed to like quell, the protests and whatever after, slave revolts, and we freed the slaves and that was it. And like, that's not the truth anymore. And I feel like this country, and I might get hate for this and I don't really care, but I feel like this country has effectively buried all the memories of the past 300 years, 400 years, because they just don't want to face the reality of what they've done. And specifically white America, but let me be perfectly clear. And again, I don't care how much hate I get for this video, but like white America has specifically been like, no, that didn't happen, or no, it wasn't that bad. And like, it was, and it did happen. Like, so that's why I put that in there. We also have Clueless Adults, because I feel like some adults are really clueless as to what to do with the problem of racism and how to be an anti-racist. Oh my God. You hear noises, my cat running around crazy behind this curtain that I have. We also have Clueless Adults. Oh, I'm sorry, I said that one already. We also have strong/smart female protagonists, and I put that in just for Angela Davis, I will be perfectly honest. She feels like the main character in this book towards the end, even though it doesn't have any main characters. It just has a series of characters that you recognize from history books. There's also switching point of view, and again, it's just because we follow a bunch of different characters and through their lives and through their history and what they've done for this country. Unusual names. There were a lot of weirdly named people in the past. And wrecking ball endings, because the book kind of does end with touching on the Black Lives Matter movement and touching on the Me Too movement. It is kind of like an emotional gut punch. Jason I feel like, if I remember correctly, he also kind of touches on, like, you know, the deaths of many Black Americans and how that affects his community, our world, our country. So it was kind of like a big ouchie at the end there. So yeah, that's it for the tropes. As always, I forgot to say this earlier, but these are just things that I've compiled over the years working as a librarian, but also stuff that I've gotten from my friends, hi Tessa, and from other websites, as well as from like fanfiction tropes, etc. And you can find all the real descriptions for them down below. They might not make sense when it comes to this video, but there we are. All right, it's my favorite part. It's the read alike part. I'll have a song eventually. So for my read alikes, again, as usual, I'm going to take one from Goodreads, one from Novelist, and one from myself, because I like to flex that mad librarian skill. And just give you guys the covers. Wow, brain. Just give you guys the covers on the screen. Y'all can read them on your own. Let me know if you've read any of them or if you've read Stamped. We could talk about it in the comments. I'm trying to get better about answering the comments, so you will see more comment answering hopefully in the future. So for today, for Stamped, Racism, Anti-Racism, and You, from Goodreads, we have She Said, Breaking the Sexual Harassment Story That Helped Ignite a Movement by Jodi Kantor. I don't think this is a YA book. However, I think teenagers can read it. I think it's fine if teenagers read it, because it is kind of about like a current movement that's happening in America with the Me Too movement. And I think that's important to talk about. So you have that. From Novelist, we have nothing. Because apparently Novelist doesn't do some nonfiction books. I literally could not find this book on Novelist. I had tried every kind of search you can think of, except for an ISBN search, and now that I think of it, I'm not going back and trying again. There's nothing on Novelist. Son, I am disappointed. So I guess it's just Goodreads and me right now. For myself, I put The Black Friend by Frederick Joseph. Now, first of all, the cover of this book's fantastic. Second of all, full disclosure, I have not read this book yet, to be honest. It's on my TBR. I'm going to get to it. But from what I know from Stamped and what I know from The Black Friend, is they're both kind of they're both kind of worded in a very friendly manner, like you're chit-chatting with somebody. And I think that's what Frederick Joseph is kind of trying to do. He's trying to like broach the topic of racism with, you know, his white friend in like a friendly manner. I have also heard that he can be a little condescending in some points, but I think you kind of have to be like that with some people in order to get your point across. I will update as soon as I read the book. I know this book is also technically nonfiction, technically YA, though adults can read YA, I don't see why not. And I just want to say, because I didn't even mention, I'm like really disappointed in Goodreads and Novelist right now, especially Goodreads, because like this is a YA book. This book is written for teenagers. Why are you giving me adult books that go with this book? Also, I discovered too that Goodreads doesn't call it recommendations anymore. Now they call it like readers who have read this book have also now read this other book. So I've been talking about the Goodreads recs the wrong way for the last 2 years that I've been doing this damn channel. So that's probably how I'm going to start phrasing them. Apparently people who read Stamped also like to read She Said. Go figure. Yeah, so those are my two recommendations. Thanks, Novelist. Let me know if you've read either of them. I am going to get to The Black Friend, probably not for a little while yet, because I'm still finishing a ton of books from last year. So we're on our way. Now, my rating for Stamped is a little low, and it's only because I loved the book. Obviously, I've been gushing about it for however long I've been gushing. But my problem with the book lies in the fact that throughout the whole thing, Jason Reynolds says to us that it's not a history book. I don't see what the problem is with history books. I get that you're trying to like reach a younger audience, so you're trying to convince them like, hey, this is a cool book, dog. But I don't know, that felt a little off to me. My other only issue with the book is like, I finished it in 4 hours and I wanted more, like way more. And yes, I could read Dr. Kendi's book or listen to it. I could do that, but Jason Reynolds doesn't read that one to me. At least I don't think so. I'm going to look into it. But like, I wanted more of Jason chatting with me. And I keep using his first name. You see how this is working? Because I feel like we're friends now. Like, I just want to chit chat with him. I just want to hang out with Jason Reynolds. But yeah, so I gave this book an 8 out of 10. I know, it's so low for me. An 8 out of 10 just for those two things. Other than that, it was a perfect book, flawless. I followed along with a lot of other things. I will be perfectly honest, and I'm sure teenagers who read or listen to this may have the same problem, that you don't really know a lot of the people in the beginning of the book, which is fine. I have no real problem with that. Aside from like the big name players like Thomas Jefferson, George Washington, Benjamin Franklin, etc., etc., etc. And then towards the ending, I was like, oh, I know that person. Oh, I know that person. Oh, I know that person. But I think that's kind of the point. I think the point is to kind of like give you all these things you don't know and then finish it off like with an easy, like, oh, you know all these people. So it made for a really interesting read. Highly, 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 highly recommend it. Please go read this book. Just because I gave it a measly 8 out of 10 doesn't mean it's not a great book. And that's it for this week. I have babbled on long enough and you all listened to it, and thank you very much. And if you feel like subscribing, that would be nice. We are really close to getting 100 subscribers. And once I get there, maybe I'll have a giveaway. Maybe I won't. I don't know. I don't know what I'm doing with this anymore. So yeah, that's it for Stamped. Let me show you the cover again. Gorgeous. And I guess I will see you all next week. So peace out, YA nerds.